I obviously did this last night, and yeah, I went right ahead and deleted it after it had been out there for about an hour and a half and had like 7,000 views in an hour and a half. My dumbass deleted it because apparently I'm retarded. I mean, it is what it is. So here we are again, and so we'll wait for some more folks to jump up on in here. But yeah, so basically this is a redo. So if you were here yesterday for my practice run at this, yeah, what's up, Paul? Doing good, man. I won't say I wasn't a little bit irritated about deleting that live feed yesterday. That's the first live feed I've done like this in years and years, and then I deleted it. It was kind of funny, but I'm not going to confirm or deny that I may have wept. I didn't weep, but here we are. So the good thing, I suppose, the silver lining here is, what's up, Greg and Chris? The silver lining here is going to be that doing the live feed on this same topic yesterday, and so many people responding to it, and apparently, vibing with what I was talking about, is that now I'm going to be able to add some more information to it. I actually have my list, my data from yesterday, so we're just going to kind of go over a lot of the same stuff I did yesterday. Obviously, I didn't write down everything I was saying. I only wrote down the data points. So I'll be going over a lot of the same data, but then I also have some more data based on some of the questions I received via PM yesterday about kind of what I was talking about the limb pocket lengths, the limb pocket angles, and that kind of stuff. So basically what I did is I went back in and measured all of the available bows that I have behind me, and kind of have some measurements on total limb length, actual limb length, and by actual limb length, I will explain, kind of what that's about. But in the meantime, obviously appreciate you guys, coming in here for these. Like I said last night, I apologize. I should have kept doing these over the years, but I didn't, with Bow Junkie and then all of the other stuff I was doing. It was like shooting and archery, and yeah, I won't bullshit you guys. I pretty much got arched out there for a hot minute, but been in the basement sucking on battery acid for a minute, so I'm ready to kind of get back after this stuff. And like I said yesterday on the feed, it's been kind of frustrating for an old head like myself to see some of the reviews I see these days on TikToks and Instagrams and Facebooks, and they're getting all these views, and guys literally go, here's the new bow, it's pretty, it draws nice, here's how fast it shoots. And then they want a bunch of clicks and people give them likes, and I'm over here like, you didn't say anything. You didn't say anything. You didn't tell anybody anything. And so, and for those of you that have been following me for more than a minute and a half, you know that whether it was on Bow Junkie or my personal stuff, I'm not the infomercial guy. I'm not a hard sell guy. I can't stand it when people do that. And so whenever I talk about stuff, I want there to actually be some content to it. Creating content is not the same as having content. And so, and I'm not trying to talk bad about anybody else out there, but it just seems like actual real discussions about archery and equipment and stuff these days are getting more rare, and that kind of sucks. And so anyway, I'm sure some people are going to start joining in here in a minute. We're only at 13 right now, but it's all good. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the intent of the live feed yesterday was to talk about the new Hoyt Concept X. I call it the CX because I think it's funny and sometimes I stutter on concepts, so I just call it the CX. So I want to see some X's out of this bow is what I'm trying to say. And so, but before I get to that bow, I wanted to kind of talk about some historical data. And if you were, raise your hand if you were for my TED Talk last night. Anyway, and so, of the bows that I have, like right here, that is a vintage Vantage Elite Plus from Hoyt, the green one, of course. Shot that bow incredibly well. I don't have a pro comp or a podium, but here on site I do have an Invicta. Well, obviously I have the Vantage Elite Plus, I have an Invicta, I have a Stratos, and then I have the new CX. And so it's one of those things where 34-inch draw, like, my man. Word has it that Nico Wiener from over in Europe had a new Concept X with some hunting cams on there. I believe might go that long. I'm probably not going to be able to pay attention to everybody that might join in here today. Hopefully we get some decent numbers. Ben Hobbs, my man. Love that dude. Fellow OG status. Jamie, my daughter's in the house. What's up, Jamie? So for a 34-inch draw length, you might have to check in with Steve Anderson on that Nico Wiener build. I know he's long, and so definitely check that out. I know Steve's like a 33-inch guy as well. And so what I wanted to do with these bows was kind of put out some information out there, kind of talking about the historical changes of these bows as they have been going on. Obviously the Vantage Elite Plus is a little bit old, but there's some data points that I wanted to talk to you guys about and kind of put the information out there so that folks can get a little bit more information about, well, why did this bow work for me? Why didn't this bow work for me? Obviously Hoyt has a paradigm shift in cam technology happening right now. And so the new cam that's on there is very, very intriguing. So I will be getting to that as well. But just going to kind of get started here. And so basically, I'm going to grab the Invicta. I'm not going to grab the Vantage Elite Plus just because. But what I'm going to explain to you guys is basically kind of what I did to get this process started. And so I was very curious because having known that with the Pro Comp, they actually lowered the grip in the riser not that far, that's way too far, but they lowered it a good bit. And so that was some of the historical data that I wanted to give to you guys so that folks could understand, kind of how, not only how did Hoyt end up where it ended up, but kind of the trend we're seeing in a lot of bows today. So what I did is I measure axle to axle, and then I measure from axle to axle to the deepest part of the grip. That's one reference. The other reference for some of you folks that maybe think it matters is I also went, so then once I get that axle to axle, I'll measure from the top to the throat of the grip, and I'll also measure from the top to the burger button holes. So kind of the foundational information that I want to give you guys right there is on the Vantage Elite Plus. Now, mind you, with those spiral cam technology bows, axle to axle varied based on the cam size, based on, and obviously it's going to be tuned up for me, so twisting, untwisting, that kind of stuff. So just to kind of get you started here, the Vantage Elite Plus was 41.25 inches. And from the top axle to the deepest part of the grip was 20 15/16. And so the only way to use this measurement that I'm going to be talking to you about is to figure out what that ratio is. Because if you go to a bow that's 40 or you go to a bow that's 36, you can still use this as reference based on percentages. So just to give you some basic idea. So then basically I just go 20 and 15 sixteenths divided by 41 and a quarter gives us 0.507. For those of you that are already mathing, 0.50 is half. That's half. So on the Vantage Elite Plus, back in the day, the banger bow, the Mount Rushmore bow, I call it, the deepest part of the grip was dead center in the bow. Why is that relative? You're going to find out. And so the other measurement that I got was top axle to the burger button hole, which was 19 inches and a 16th. So then when you divide 19 and a 16th by 41 and a quarter, you get a 0.46. So those are our basic numbers starting from the Vantage Elite Plus is a 0.507 and a 0.46. One other thing to keep in mind, and we're going to get into some reflex and deflex conversations today too, because I really don't see quite enough people talking about that in my opinion, because the reflex and deflex is just a reference, but it's not universal. And I will explain that. Michael Price. What's up, Mike? And so basically the reflex, and the way we measure this is we go from, see if I can not drop this right square. So we go from the middle of this bolt straight across to the middle of this bolt, and then we measure to the throat of the grip. So on the Vantage Elite Plus, it is 13 sixteenths. So under an inch. Basically, if you were to draw that line, it would be almost an inch from that line up to here, and that's reflex. So that's 13 sixteenths reflex. Now, there's a lot of bow companies right now that are running deflex. A lot of the PSEs are deflexed. Most of your Hoyts are always going to be reflex. But I'm going to get into why one company doing one thing, going to another company doing another is it's not apples to apples. And so with that Vantage Elite Plus, some of the new information since I basically did a trial run last night. What's up, Stevie? Is I also measured, because I started to get curious, total limb length and then where it comes out the rocker. So you can have a 15-inch limb. I made that up, of course. You can have a 15-inch limb, but if you have a 4-inch limb pocket and your rocker's way out here, you only have an 11-inch limb. And so the rest of that is used for other things, but that part of the limb is not really bending. And so on the Vantage Elite Plus, we had a 14 and a quarter inch limb with a 3 3/4 inch long limb pocket. That was one of the first longer limb pockets that Hoyt actually went to, which gave us an effective limb length of 10.5. Now, mind you, when you go, like if you were to talk to, a Brian Gold or, anyone from any other company, when they measure from the center of the limb bolt. Yeah, I'm not doing that. I just measured the whole limb. So my measurements are just old dude with a flexible steel tape and glasses. So my measurements are not necessarily going to be dead nuts with what Hoyt or some of the other folks out there are going to say, but that's what's going on with the Vantage Elite Plus. So that's just kind of a baseline to tell you what was going on basically 12, 15 years ago. Now, the Invicta. I wasn't shooting this Invicta when it was actually in production. I was shooting PSEs at the time. And look, I've shot Matthews, I've shot PSE, I've shot Hoyt. I've shot all the big three. At this point, I think it goes without saying, without contestation, that Hoyt, builds the best bow out there. That doesn't mean that they're always going to win. But if you were to put people on a deserted island and ask them what bow they wanted, anyone who knows. I'm just saying. And so now let's start talking about the Invicta. So the Invicta for me came in at 41 1/8 axle to axle. The top axle to the grip was 22 1/8. So if I divide the 22 1/8 by the 41 1/8, that gives us a .537. So if you remember from the older Vantage Elite, that was a .50. So obviously what we're seeing is the grip is migrating down the bow, putting more of the riser above the hand. And we're going to get into some of, why they're doing that. Also on the Invicta, this is the part that, starts things out. From the top axle to the burger buttonhole was 20 1/4. So if you divide 20 1/4 by 41 1/8, that gives you a .492. So from the Vantage Elite Plus was a .46 from the top axle to the burger buttonhole. Now we're at a .492. And that kind of starts what we're going to consider our modern day geometries. I don't necessarily think we're ever going to get back to, bows where the deepest part of the grip is dead center. Most of your stuff's going to have more riser above. So with the Invicta, it also had about 1 inch of reflex. So a little bit more reflex than the Vantage Elite Plus, but still about 1 inch from the bolts each side, probably about here, and then you would go up 1 inch to the throat of the grip, and that's going to be the reflex up on this bow. So the only reason and this bow, of course, came with what's up, Chester? Came standard with a cable rod. I'm an old head. I prefer cable rods. This is a chromed cable rod. It is slick as worm sperm. Rain, sleet, sun, shine, it don't matter, son. This thing just works amazing. But I'm an old head. It's what I like. And it's worked very, very well. But with this being kind of the new standard, you could say, this is going to be kind of our benchmark as we move forward through some of this data. The Vantage Elite Plus was just to show you how much things have changed in just the last 12, 15 years. I know a lot of people say that, well, new bows are so much different than old bows. In some ways, but then not in others. And so with the Invicta, that's basically what we're looking at. Before the Invicta, though, you had the Pro Comp, and Hoyt had listened to some shooters' input, and they really, for the first time in their history, lowered the grip on the Pro Comps, and some folks had good luck with them, and some folks didn't. I remember a lot of us had issues with it, and it was Jesse Broadwater that figured out you needed to put the arrow literally way above the burger buttonhole, and then it was lights out from there. With the follow-ups of the podium moved the grip a little bit back closer to where most folks thought that it needed to be. Now keep in mind, during this transition, they went away from the limbs that are on the Vantage Elite Plus back here. They went away from the XT 2000 and 3000 limbs. And so what you need to understand is, and I'm going to get into some of the other geometry stuff too, is limbs don't work on all cams. Cams don't work on all limbs. So as you saw, because the way the spiral cam was designed was with those recurve style XT 2000, 3000 limbs, which were heavy, and heavy makes you slow, but you could certainly trust them under any circumstances. I just can't. I mean, I would splinter a bunch on the edge, but I'd literally sand it down, glue it, and those XT 2000 limbs were bulletproof. And so going away from that limb technology, there's a little bit of a transitionary period there. Not a little bit. There's a lot of a transitionary period there. By the way, while we're at it, like and share this live feed. I forgot to say that at the beginning because I've kind of forgot how to do all this apparently. But like and share the live feed so other folks can join in, and we can get those numbers up where they were last night. I appreciate that. But this bow, obviously, SVX, Hoyt has tried to make other cams to not necessarily replace the XVX, but it is not, what modern day shooters are necessarily liking for the shooting experience. And so by the time I get to the CX, of course, you will see, a lot of that come to fruition. So just to recap, your Invicta for the axle to axle to grip, had a .537. Top axle to the burger buttonhole ratio was a .492. So if you liked if the Invicta and the Podium especially, but the Invicta, if the Invicta worked for you and you liked the Invicta, you're going to like the new offering a lot, and I'll get to that. So that's the Invicta. A lot of people had really good results with this. Not a lot of folks had many issues with it from my recollection. Like I said, I wasn't shooting it when it was in production, but I sure saw a lot of people winning with it. And so now we're going to move on to the Stratos. There are a couple things that I want to point out first. Hold on. So, put on my portable binoculars. So, one thing that I want to point out to you guys, and I don't know how well you can see it on my cam here, but if you get this limb pocket in here, you just don't see anything up in here except for the aluminum pocket and the limb. You come out here, the rocker situation is high and tight. Hoyt has historically had the best limb pockets. I'm sorry, I've shot them all. Not all, but I've shot the big three for a lot. And I can just tell you that Hoyt has, is my camera not focusing or what? Hoyt has had the best limb pockets. It just is what it is. And I saved a picture to my phone today. And so whenever someone talks to me about limb pockets, I just go like this. If you know, you know. That limb pocket, all other aspects aside, that limb pocket right there is the most legendary limb pocket our sport has or will ever see. That pocket was bulletproof, indestructible. It was, and that limb pocket had to deal with XT 3000s and 3500 limbs with spirals out of these short, just stiff as all get out risers that Hoyt used to make. So that limb pocket is the unit of all measure in my opinion. Now, obviously things have been skeletonized and wanted to cut weight, but while keeping all of the same functionality. So, moving on to the Stratos. And look, let's just say it out loud. This bow did not jive, or everybody didn't jive with this bow. They just didn't. Not everybody got down with this bow, and I didn't shoot it enough to really know, and then I got an Invicta, and I shot the Invicta better in 2 hours than after 2 weeks with this bow. But let me tell you something right now. I shot in Reading with Louis Price. And what I witnessed out of this bow in the hands of Louis was nothing short of spectacular. Like, I've seen some good shooting in my days. These peepers have seen some amazing shooting. And the 2-down effort that I saw from Louis Price and Reading with a Stratos, nah, dog, you ain't going to shoot any better. I mean, obviously he didn't win, but 2 down, and he was pipe all day, air day. It was some of the best shooting I've ever seen in my life. On my deathbed, when I talk about some of the best shooting I've ever seen, I was with Jesse when he shot 1 down. I've been with Jesse when he shot some 560s that were on field it was dumb. Louis Price's performance with a Stratos last year in Reading will be on that list because it was phenomenal. So I can't say, I'm not going to say a bunch of bad stuff about the Stratos whatsoever, but this bow is really going to get us into some of the other areas for discussion that I think are going to be very, very valuable to some of you guys. Some of those, there we go. Let's get them numbers up. Like and share this so everybody can, not everybody,
We don't want everybody here. Let's just be honest. But anyway, let's get some more people in here. So like and share the live feed. But the Stratos. I know that everybody thought it was a certain kind of thing, and some folks were saying it was a certain kind of thing. But let me start off when I talk about the Stratos to say that I appreciate a company, any company, I don't care who it is. I appreciate a company trying to go outside the box, trying to read the room, and trying to do something that they have historically not really done. I appreciate that. Is that always the best thing for the company? No, it's not. But in this instance, I'm going to give Hoyt a lot of credit for trying something that they've not done before. I mean, I have to, just out of that's just respect. I would do the same thing for any other company. And so as we start to talk about that, thank you, Chester. I appreciate you, buddy. Still waiting on that package. When we start talking about the measurements of the Stratos. So we got 40 3/4. The top axle to the deepest point of the grip was 22 1/16. That gives us a ratio of 0.54. Remember what our ratio was on the Invicta? 0.537. 0.537 to 0.54 is the exact same in my book, considering I'm not an engineer. I wasn't doing this on a CAD program. I was doing it with a big metal ruler. So it's identical. So I'll continue. So on the Stratos, the top axle to the burger buttonhole was 20 1/8. 20 1/8 divided by the axle to axle gives you a 0.493. The Invicta was a 0.492. Are you seeing where this is headed? So this bow is the exact same geometry up and down. I mean, it's side to side right now, but if the bow's like this bow is the exact same geometry as the Invicta. However, it takes a massive deviation from the Invicta in this next regard. So the Invicta was a 1-inch reflex. Like I said, meaning if you go from here to here, it's going to be about down here, and then it's going to be 1 inch to here. On the Stratos, however, and look, I've never really questioned, especially at the time, that would have been wildly inappropriate, but even since then, I have not messaged or called Zach or Steve or Brian and been like, so why did you do that? But here comes the thing. If you loved the Invicta, but for some reason didn't vibe with the Stratos, the reflex on the Stratos is 1/4 inch. Okay? So from this to the other one, that line is 1/4 inch down here instead of 1 inch. 3/4 inch shift in reflex is massive. Massive. It's huge. That is gigantic. And I do give Hoyt props for trying that. They've never done that. Good for them. They tried it. Remember, the Vantage Elite Plus, the old school one, 1 inch. 13/16, my bad. But so from the Invicta to the Stratos was 1/4 inch reflex. So 3/4 inch change. Now, there's other things that are going to have to affect that as well. And this is where the conversation really goes down rabbit holes is the limb angle, the limb pocket angle, the limb designs, and the cam technology all play a role in that. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the limbs at rest for both of these bows, there we go. They ain't the same, dog. They ain't the same. You can tell the limb pocket angle is different. You can tell the limb bend rate is different. Everything is different from the Invicta to the Stratos when it comes to the limb pocket angle, the limbs, and the whole 9 yards. And that is incredibly important, because here's the thing. I know a lot of people want to go, oh, well, that one bow held really good. I'm just going to use the PSEs as an example. The Supra is about 7/8 of an inch deflex. So it's completely in front of the hand. But here's the thing. The limb pocket angle, the limb technology, and the cam technology play a huge role into how that works. You couldn't take a Supra riser and put Hoyt limbs and cams on it and it work. It wouldn't work. Conversely, you couldn't take a Stratos and take off the limbs and cams and put PSE limbs and cams in there. Obviously, they're not the same width. They wouldn't fit, but you get the point. The geometry of these bows is not just about what you think holds best. So it's the whole system. If you take a if you take a Matthews TRX and a Matthews Title, there's going to be some differences there, and they're not interchangeable with other brands. One deflection or reflection of one company's riser is not comparing apples to apples to another company's. That's not how it works. And that was the reason for doing this, doing this live feed was, I think a lot of people get caught up in the fact of, oh, well, the deflection and the deflection, and that's a good comparison. No, it's not. It's not. No. It's not. You can insert the Danny DeVito meme. It's not the same. And so that part is really important. So when you think you have a deflection or a reflection that you think holds good for you or shoots good for you, you have to factor in the limb pocket angle, the limb curve, the bend rate, and the cam technology into that. So that is very, very important. So the Stratos was a massive shift, 3/4 of an inch less reflex than the Invicta. Is that the only reason not as many people vibed with the Stratos? I don't know. There's a couple other things that I do want to show you here as well. Once again, for me, and look, I've not talked to anybody at Hoyt about this. I'm friends with them. I'm friends with the guys I could talk to a lot of folks about it, but this is just me observing at this point. So this is the Stratos, and if you look at the limb pocket up in here, you'll see that there's a plastic piece that goes around the end of the limb, has the little nipple there that goes over the limb, but that's some sort of an insert inside the pocket that encapsulates the end of the limb that the Invicta didn't have, the Podium and the Pro Comp and the Vantage Elite Plus didn't have. And I'll let you take a guess on whether this new bow has it or not. I can't say it's good, I can't say it's bad, but what I can say is it's not there anymore. So, there's also, on the front side here, there's also a little bit of, not as much, I don't think, of an issue with the front. It looks like it's damn near a press fit in there. So taking this particular limb pocket out and disassembling this was a thing. It wasn't a kind of thing that everybody could just do and not do. There was some rocking fit type deals that had to take place with this. But this cam, of course, is the SVX. And this bow really signifies, let's just be honest here. Let me talk about this. This platform really signifies Hoyt trying to make a cam that was developed. Now, they did modulate it, but this was them trying to really almost fit a round peg into a square hole. Square peg into a round hole. Depends on the size of the peg, I guess, or the hole. But they were really trying to keep the SVX alive, per se, because, man, this thing won a lot. The SVX won a lot. And so a lot of your pro shooters that were doing really, really well with it, they wanted that feel. They wanted that feedback. They wanted that aggressiveness. It's aggressive. And so Hoyt was really trying to meld everything together, read the room. They changed the reflex. So that was my point, is this bow, this direction is the exact same as the Invicta. It's not this direction. And so that is something to keep in mind if you loved the Invicta, but the Stratos didn't necessarily vibe for you. You have different limb pocket angles. You have, cam technology that they're trying to basically please everybody that loves the SVX by integrating this into here so that they can, keep that ball moving. And look, I'll just be honest with you. I'm not a fan of bow companies having to make new bows every 2 years. I think it's hot. I don't like it at all. I've made no bones about it. I don't think it's good for the industry. I don't think it's good for companies. I don't think it's good for revenue. It affects price. Like if you're the guy that wants a new bow every other year, you should probably keep the hole under your nose shut when it comes to the prices continuing to go up. Because I promise you right now, Hoyt is already working on 2027 stuff. 26 stuff. Probably 27 stuff too. Easily 27 stuff. I'm just going to say. So if they had longer to develop this stuff, I think that some of the bugs that they learned from on the Stratos probably wouldn't have even happened. Same goes with other companies too, so don't think this is just a Hoyt thing. Like when a lot of these... So I haven't even taken... Well, this isn't even the new bow. I'll get to that in a minute. But these companies having to do all this R&D and develop all this new product and build up inventory every 2 years is... Dude, 2 years goes by like that. It's super, super quick. And so, with that being said, I just... Right, literally, Chester... Hunting bows are every year, and trust me, the bow companies don't want to do it. The only reason that they have to, because customers come in, they're like, what do you got new this year? But yet, if you go to buy a new Ford F-350 and you go from the 2023 to the 24, the only difference is maybe some more electronical features or tidbits or some different leather. It's the same damn truck. The motor's been how long's the 6.7 been around? How long's the twin turbo EcoBoost been around? Using Ford as an example, of course. You get the point. The Cummins. How much has the Cummins changed the last however many years? So what I'm saying is we as a customer base, and it's all of us, we're screwing ourselves. And the companies are simply responding because they have to sell bows. I can remember when new bows were released at ATA. That shit will never happen again. Simply because a company's going to release in October, get a bunch of sales, and then a company's going to lose sales at the ATA. So that's just not going to happen. And so when we start thinking about how these platforms is really what they are, how these platforms are modified and growing over the years, I just wanted you guys to kind of follow along and learn kind of how that's happening. And more importantly, why and what companies are learning in the process. So when I bring up the CX, you're going to basically see that Hoyt took, not Vantage Elite, that's too old, but they took Pro Comp Podium, Invicta, even the Stratos, and they basically, put it all into a big pot, boiled it, stirred it, and whatever cream rose to the top, that's basically, from what I can tell, that's basically what they scooped off the top, and that's what they made the CX all about. As we know, the spiral cam didn't necessarily have the shooter experience that a lot of folks in the mainstream wanted. And I'll just say this from my personal opinion. If you were to take the top 25 pros, and I mean the bangers, and you were to tell them they could shoot any bow they want, I think a lot of them would be shooting older bows. I just do. I've had a lot of conversations with them, and You know, you can talk about the old Apex 8s and the Conquest 4s and the Vantage Elite Pluses and the Ultra Elites. And a lot of those, I mean, those bows were built different. They weren't super soft on the shot. I mean, if you ever shot an Apex 8, it was like 104-inch string or whatever it was. But by God, that thing pounded. I had a Ultra Elite from Hoyt with brown spirals on it. I called it Chocolate Thunder. When you went to shoot that thing, you needed to shoot it with some intent and pay attention, because it would shoot you out just as quick as the arrow. But it railed. It pounded and never changed. And so, as the market has demanded that hunting bows start to feel and be nice and soft like hunting bows, in my opinion, I don't think it's made target bows better. That would be like NASCAR saying that NASCARs have to ride like Cadillacs. That would kind of affect things a lot. And so what they learned from the Stratos, there was probably some good stuff they learned too, but here's the other thing. If you think Hoyt didn't have this bow to my left ready to, basically conceived and in process when this bow was being shot on tour, you are out of your mind. I've heard a lot of people say, well, they had to make that new bow because of the Stratos didn't this or that or the other. Pull your head out. No. I guarantee you they already have stuff hanging on the wall in Hoyt's engineering department for after the CX. Whether it's cams, limbs, right? They're already working on the next one. So they were already working on that bow when this bow was going. It's just the way it works. There's not enough time for them to, be that reactive. Bow companies just can't pivot in the middle of a platform because, some folks say it's not working for them. That's just not reality. So, once again, on the Stratos, massive change in reflex. Massive change in reflex. One of the other things I want to point out to you is the Stratos has a 12 and 3/4 inch limb. This distance right here is 3 7/8, which gives you an effective limb length of 8.875. And that's something to pay attention to, because as you start to something that I pay attention to anyway. So as you start to manipulate the string angle or the limb pocket angles, the bend rate of the limbs, like let's jump back up real quick here. So the Invicta had a 13.5-inch limb with a 3 7/8 inch long, we'll just call it a pocket for lack of a better term at this moment, which gave us a 9.62 effective limb length. See? But that needed a longer effective limb length because it had more bend in it. See? So the axle to axles could literally be virtually almost the same, but the Invicta needed a longer effective limb length outside of the rocker here, because this stuff in here is just for stability, but this part's not bending. So from here to here on the Invicta has more curl, so therefore you needed a longer overall limb with a 3 7/8 and 3 7/8. So the Invicta and the Stratos had the same pocket length here, but a longer limb here to result, because of that curve, to result in the same damn near axle to axle. So that kind of stuff, really gives you a lot of insight into, one, how these bows grow into what they are, and why some things need to happen. If you look at this limb and you look at some of the other limbs, you're not going to know the difference. They're not XT2000s anymore. You can't see the cool lines on the outside and all that stuff. So we have no idea what's happening in here. And if you look at a lot of these limbs, you'll see that they're thicker here and they get skinnier here. Some of them are wider and taper a little bit. So there's a lot of things that go into a limb rather than just a stock limb. I mean, if you're an old head like me, I probably still have some XT2000s laying around. But these limbs and these cam technologies were going a whole different direction. And so this bow kind of is the poster child for Hoyt's true pivot into, and I don't want to call it the modern day target bow, but it's kind of what it is. I mean, if you look, not geometry wise, and I'm going to get to that, but that's the Stratos right there. I give Hoyt a lot of credit for trying to go outside of their normal box, and that's important. Matthews, what was their logo since the dawn of time? They were the one cam fam. Well, when they started seeing what was happening and they started doing their own research and building, they started building split limb bows. They rebranded, and they're still killing it. They're still killing it. So companies that get locked into a certain methodology sometimes need to step outside that box to learn what they need to learn. And so it's just my opinion from this next piece of equipment I'm going to bring up that I really think that Hoyt, wouldn't that also raise brace height? No, not necessarily, because basically what you're talking about is you're talking about the distance from here to here, but with more of a curve, it's just going to take a longer limb to get to the same place. So this is greatly exaggerated, of course, but imagine if this came down like this and in. Then it'd look like a PSE. So anyway, so there's that. All right, so take me a drink off of this. Yes, that's an energy drink. And no, it's not going to keep me up. I worked for the railroad back in the 90s and the 2000s. I can literally drink an energy drink and take some, what the heck was that? Hydroxycut to stay awake back in the day, and I can literally take a nap. So that ain't going to affect me. So all right, here it comes. Here is the Hoyt CX Concept X, excuse me. Conquest would have been bad. Concept X, right here. I call it the CX because I plan on seeing a lot of X's with it. First and foremost, man, I don't give a shit about color. Sorry. Yeah, it's got that cool paint on it. It changed colors and light. It's all sparkly. All right. That's cool. I don't know. I'm a black bow guy. Murder Inc., son. Then again, I wear Hawaiian shirts forever. So I guess I could shoot whatever the hell I want, but I just don't care about bow color. Steve could have sent me a hot pink one and I would have been just fine. He didn't. So this does, and I don't know necessarily what they call this color. It's pretty neat, but it's just me. I don't care about the color of a bow. Although at this point, I probably wouldn't shoot a blue one. Red till you're dead, son. If you get it, you get it. Anyway, so this is the Concept X. This is the CX right here. Number one, I am not a fan of roller guards on target bows. But my opinion don't matter. Just personal preference. I like my chromed ones. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this. It's just not my preferred. I just don't prefer it. Just my preference. Back in the day when these started, man, we used to play hell chewing up serving on the cable in between these. I'm sure these are going to be fine. I'm just trying to be honest with you guys. I don't prefer it. But it's probably not even going to matter. It's just my personal preference. I haven't even changed out the cams on this bow yet. It's called Skeeters. Not a lot, Dean. It wasn't a whole lot longer. The limb pocket angle is really what really what changed a lot of that stuff. I mean, it was a little bit, but the limb pocket angle is really what got them there. So on this one, like I said, I've not even put on the hot rod modules for myself yet. But I can tell you one thing right now. And look, here's a problem that I always have. Those are a problem for me, especially on this. But I got to tell you, I've just drawn it with my fingers, and I am liking this taper. I'm liking the way that it comes up, and then there's another little shelf that comes up. I'm liking the way on this side, it's there's good room here. There's room for my thumb, and my knuckle on my index finger on this side is not mashing into it super, super hard like it has on some other shoot-throughs that were actually painful. And if your index finger hits that hard, it's going to torque the bow this way. Who asked that? Chester. I don't know. I would have Chester. Chester asked, if you guys didn't see, if a regular cable rod could go in here. I don't know that. I would probably have to pull off this little 40X sticker right here and see if there's a bolt. But at this point, I don't know, to be honest. Obviously, I'm not going to try that to start simply because, yeah, right, exactly. But I love the way it feels. The shoot through part feels with my mitts. So I'm appreciating that already. I love the fact that there's two arrow rest holes. I'm about that. But here comes some of the, and look, and I don't mean to be demeaning to anybody at Hoyt. I love you guys. But this bow, from this hand down to the bottom, looks tough as shit. What is this? Just being honest. I'm sure it's there for a reason, but I'm sure I'm just being picky and it doesn't matter. I don't care about aesthetics, but I'm just wondering what this is about. There is a slight hole through here, so like I said last night, maybe that's for opening up beer bottles. I'd probably chip this shiny paint or Cerakote, whatever it is. But yeah, I'm sure it's here for a reason, but when you look at the bow from my hand all the way down, that bitch is tough looking. You got this. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but I mean, it doesn't look terrible. I'm just giving my blushed opinion on it. So here comes some of the dope on this. You ready for this? Just to recap from the Invicta, our top axle to grip was a .537. Our top axle to the burger button hole was a .492 on the Invicta. On the Stratos, identical. .54, .493. That's the same. Okay, on the CX, 40 and a quarter axle to axle. The top to the grip was 22 for a .546. Identical. It's the same. Top axle to the burger button hole, 20.16. .498. So, the Invicta and the Stratos are the exact same this way. Period. And let's be honest here. So the Invicta for me was 41 and an eighth, which was almost an inch longer than the CX. The Stratos was 40 and 3/4, half inch longer than this, just a little bit shorter than the Invicta. Yet they all have the same ratio of top axle to throw to the grip and top axle to burger button hole. So what does that tell you? That tells you that if you love the Invicta, but you didn't like the Stratos, and they're the exact same this way, there's a couple other variables in there that might have mattered. So here comes the money shot. The reflex on this CX is 15/16. So, if you were an Invicta fan, you're gonna be shitting in high cotton. You're really gonna like this platform because it's virtually the same. Obviously, it has a cable rod, and we will get into the cam system. But everyone, be sure to like and share this live feed so we can get this back out there to some more folks. But this bow, this way for the grip, and geometry-wise with reflex is within a 1/16 of an inch of the Invicta. It's identical to the Stratos except for the 3/4 of an inch of reflex, which is huge. So now I'm not going to grab the Stratos because we've already determined that it had the more stood up limb pocket and straighter. So let's look at those. Let's look at that limb. And then let's look at that limb. Well, those look pretty darn similar, don't you think? Pretty close. I mean, I could probably do some measurements for brace height, the full draw, and all that shit, but I ain't gonna. It's close enough for what we're dealing with. And so, now that we know that this bow is I mean, obviously the cutouts are different. It's got this beer bottle opener slot on the top. APA ain't got nothing on Hoyt with the being able to open beer bottles. I don't drink, so I don't know if that's real or not, and you're not trying it on my bow. But anyway, but if you're an Invicta fan, this is a great start for you. Got the same reflex geometry, measurements, top to bottom, exactly the same. Only difference at this point, going to be a roller guard, not a cable slide. So, with that being said, let's get down here to some juice. It is obvious from the beginning of pulling this thing out the box, that limb pocket's shorter. I can see it with my eyeballs. See that paint? That's pretty cool, I guess. It's not paint, Cerakote, powder Cerakote. Yeah. The limb pocket shorter. So, what does that mean? Don't know, but we're going to find out right now. So, the CX has a 12-inch limb. The Invicta had a 13.5. Stratos had a 12 3/4. And the CX has a 12, so this riser is definitely longer. With a 3 1/8 pocket, 3 1/8 pocket for an effective limb length of exactly the same as the Stratos, 8.875. So the effective limb length of this bow, the CX, is the exact same limb length as the Stratos. The Invicta was 9.62. So, to the question, I forgot who asked about so it's an Invicta with new cams. Not just, Jeff, you're not far off. However, that's what I'm going to get to right now. This is an all-new limb from Hoyt. This is not the same limb that was on the Invicta, and this is not the same limb that was on the Stratos. And so, Hoyt in there... Look, man, everybody's always learning. I love those guys over there. They're great people. Nobody knows everything. I don't care who it is. And so they have been learning. They have obviously, look at this thing. If you would have given this to me 10 years ago and said, who built this, Hoyt wouldn't have been on the list. Just being honest. But Hoyt is obviously getting with the program when it comes to the user experience side. And one thing I can tell you about Hoyt, love them, hate them, or whatever, they go by a motto that I like, that I live by also, which is anything worth doing is worth overdoing. And when it comes to Hoyt building a bow, they overbuild everything. And so I give them a ton of respect for that part. Whether you even shoot their bows, like I said earlier, if I stick you on a deserted island and I make you build a bow for survival, Hoyt will probably be it. Because if you miss and lose all your arrows, you can beat an animal to death with it. They're that tough. And so that part is good. And to answer your questions, I see them coming in my text messages. Yes, I got the new laces right. Chia. For show. The freak shows will be going on this as soon as I get this thing squared away. Like I said, I haven't even put on the modules yet. But, so we've discussed all this geometry. And yes, Jeff, you're not wrong. This riser, from its true, geometrical measurements, is basically the exact same as an Invicta, but it's going to be longer. The limb pocket angles aren't going to be the same. And these limbs are obviously wider. These limbs are wider. It's clear that they went to some sort of a larger axle system. Now, there's no E-clips, there's screws, so obviously, and I look inside and see their spacers and whatnot. In the little box of goodies that came with my mods and stuff, there's some additional spacers as well, and I think them bitches is aluminum, which is pretty dope. But obviously they went to some sort of a 1/4-inch axle system. When I put on my gas strings, I will absolutely be pulling this all apart. But because it's the first time, I will just strip this thing down to it butt naked and see what we see from there. There's probably going to be a lot of questions on any sort of, spacer systems, whether, call it a top hat, call it the snapped in ones from PSE or any of that. But look, here's another hard truth that a lot of folks in our space don't like to necessarily accept. Every bow company pays other bow companies to use patents. Period. End of story. I don't care what company it is. They all pay somebody to use their shit. Stop acting like that's special. It's not. Sorry. Just is what it is. So when it comes down to the spacers and the snap-ins and stuff, look, if you want to do a snap-in spacer type system, you're going to have to pay Matthews. You're going to have to pay Prime. And then depending on if you want a sleeve in there to address limb spacing, then you'll have to pay PSE. It's just what it is. Don't act like it's not. That's business as usual in this industry. So it is what it is. Don't make something out of nothing. And I know archers are really good at that, but that's just the nature of this beast. So I will be taking this apart. I am curious how exactly they did it. And to be more specific, what I'm going to do, Mike, for the same reason I paid $90,000 for a new truck and I go down and put new tires on it. Because, yeah, it comes with tires. Yeah, they'll drive me down the road. But for some of the shit that I do, I want the confidence to know that I got exactly what I want and what I need on there. Period. And I've been, look, let's talk about strings real quick. I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of in-depth stuff here, but I started helping Winner's Choice Custom Bowstrings in 2000. I would get off work from the train in Klamath Falls, Oregon, and go wake up Tom Neely, and he'd go start a fire out in his shop, and we'd make bus cables for Bowtech in 2000. So I've been around the string game for a hot minute. I've seen a lot of them come, and I've seen a lot of them go. And to be honest with you, a lot of the ones that go don't go because of business practices. They go because their product doesn't necessarily stand the test of time. I've never been to the gas facility. I know Eric Griggs fairly well. We don't take long walks on the beach together or any of that kind of cool stuff, but I like him. I trust him. And I can tell you from firsthand experience from the beginning until now, in my opinion, and I don't get paid by nobody, so save that drama for your mama, gas bowstrings are the best strings on the market right now. And the one thing that can, I mean, let's be honest here, the one thing that can screw up your arching experience is a shitty set of strings. And I'm not trying to say these are shitty. I'm not trying to say the Matthews or the I'm not trying to say any factory string is shitty. I'm trying to say I'm out here trying to be the best I can be. And I don't expect Hoyt to put $150 pair of strings, pair of laces on my new shit. Because if they did, number one, it'd be the wrong color. So I don't expect my Ford, I don't expect Hoyt or any bow company to put the elite level of strings on my brand new bow. I don't expect it, and I don't want it. You want to know why? Because stay in your lane. Period. You're not going to see Gas Bowstrings start making other shit because he's going to stay in his lane. And you want to know why Eric's going to stay in his lane? Because he's got a bunch of people like me that if he gets outside of his lane, they're going to get a text going, "What are you doing?" And Eric's been in this game long enough to know exactly what I'm talking about. So the reason that I changed strings out right away, oh, here's another tip. Oh, right there. See that Hoyt right channel, the RX8? It's not the new one. I'm not cool enough for that anymore. I will shoot a hunting bow in, per se, before I put on, well, you can see it has gas strings on it now. But I'll shoot and get my hunting bow close with stock strings, and then I'll change it out one cable at a time, etc., etc. Takes me a couple days usually, but then I'll transfer it over to gas strings. On a target bow, however, I start with the gas strings from the beginning, just because. And so that's the answer for the strings. I know that as a consumer, you're like, I just paid $1,800 for this. Why should I have to put new strings on it right away? I paid a shit ton for an F350 crew cab long bed diesel. It hurt, that amount of money. I don't give a shit what tires came on it. I didn't buy it from a custom shop. I bought it from the manufacturer. So I don't expect it to have the tires that I necessarily want or need on it for what I'm going to be doing. That's the answer. I'm not sure exactly how they did their 1/4-inch axle adaptation in here. I will be finding that out. And yes, I'm going to start doing more of these live feeds. No, I'm not going to delete them like I did the one last night. Freaking idiot. But one of the other things, about this cam. So obviously the cam is much larger, kind of, in the tradition of what we're seeing as popular in our space right now. Here's the thing about the larger cams is it allows you to do more and have a lot more shooter experience. And so going back to the Hoyt, anything worth doing is worth overdoing. Now, is this needed in 2024 or 25? I don't know, man, but I don't run Hoyt. But Hoyt has testing protocols for dry fires for risers. Hoyt has testing protocols for dry fires on limbs. Hoyt used to have, and I'm not saying used to because I know they don't, but Hoyt used to have, I think it was 50, that could be wrong, dry fires for cams. I'm just going to give you my personal opinion here. I don't give a shit if a cam will withstand a dry fire. If I dry fire this bow, I deserve everything I get when it comes to putting it back together. I'm sorry, it's just me. It's just me. I want what is going to be the best, the most accurate, the most dependable, the most consistent. And if I dry fire the bow, that is Greg error, user error, and that's my fault. And so when I see someone dry fire a bow and the cam bends and they're like, "Oh, what?" Oh, I'll have a comment. Like, no, that's all you, brother. That's all you. All of you. And so that's just kind of my philosophy on it. But I have no doubt. I mean, if you can just look, this is That's pretty hollowed out for a Hoyt target cam. So it's going to allow them to use their limb technology with their limb pocket angle and this cam technology to do a couple things. So number two, as you can see that they have the floating yoke on here right now. I do like the adapter they have in there. They have some ridges and some things in place to prevent movement. I like that. As I said last night on the live feed that I deleted, yeah, I'm pretty sure at some point someone's going to put a 3-piece system on here with a different kind of yoke. Will it be better? I don't know if it'll be better at all. But I can tell you one thing. If someone builds it, and I would imagine Hoyt already did it, probably didn't see a difference. I don't know if they saw a difference. I can tell you with some previous bows, there was a difference with some consistency, but this looks a little bit more well thought out on the splitter aspect of it. But I'm sure we're going to see somebody down the road make a 3-piece for this and use either another company's or a custom splitter for the long yoke here, and then it'll be a 3-piece system out of 5. Sure. Sure. Shops, archery shops, and people that change their own strings would probably appreciate that. Gas would probably appreciate that, but it just is what it is. I'm pretty confident that Hoyt, put out a system that's going to be appropriate for what they were doing. And if a 3-piece ends up, for some reason, proving to be valuable to them, then perhaps you'll see that adjustment. I only bring that up because I've seen what's been happening in the past. For those of you that I've seen online say, oh, it's the PSE and the Matthews cam, you should stop interneting for the day. If you think that this cam and the PSE cam and the Matthews cams are all the same because they have a 5-piece with a floating yoke like this, you should probably be done interneting for the day. They're not the same. They're not the same at all. Using the more local one, if you've Dave Madden, Destructo Dave, it doesn't proof much. He just breaks it. But if you've had some problems tuning a different brand of bow, and you've contacted me and I've told you to advance the top cam by a 1/2 inch on the module and then retime the bow, and then you're like, oh my God, it fixed it. Right. But you don't hear me say that about the other brand of bow. So, no, these cams are not all the same. And so I can tell you something that I appreciate about Hoyt. Now, once again, this is just me, my opinion, and opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one and nobody thinks theirs stinks. I appreciate the fact that Hoyt is not making a one-size-fits-all, here's your cam, take it or fuck off. I don't necessarily like that. So I appreciate the fact that Hoyt is still to this point differentiating between hunting cams, and true target cams. And here's why. Do you think Tiger Woods golf clubs are the exact same clubs you're going to go pick up at your local pro shop? Checking. Can you go down to Big 5 and buy an NBA official game ball? No, you can't. Not that there's anything special about them, but they're real and they're super expensive and they're not readily available. You have to find one. Daryl Hunt's out there saying, if you can't tune this bow, you're a Riri. Well, we'll be finding out this week, Daryl. But this cam is not the other company's cams that have floating yokes, I assure you. So what I appreciate about this cam from Hoyt specifically is, rather than do what they've done in the past, which is have multiple cam families, an SVX, other cam this and other cam that. What they've done is they have used this foundation for a cam and then they've taken the module route to address the shootability, shooter experience aspect of it. Some of us like the SVX. Some folks want a little bit softer feel and a little smoother without the hump on the back, etc. So they have addressed those issues with the module on this foundation of a cam. Couldn't really do that on the older SVX families because you could adjust draw length, but you weren't necessarily going to address some of those other things. So props to the other companies that are, using a similar style of cam. But speaking of, going back to the every 2-year thing and how much I hate bow companies having to do it. And I've seen some stuff on the interwebs of, well, they don't have all the spec modules for these yet. Well, no, because it's hard to keep up. When Matthews released the title, what was the biggest complaint when the title first came out? Mods. They didn't have all the mods. Well, it took them, I don't know how long it took them, but they got caught up on all the mods. They made all the available mods, all the available let-offs and weights and blah, 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 blah. Just took them some time to get caught up. If they had had 3 or 4 years between, they could have had all of that ready to go at launch, but there's just simply not time. And so that's just kind of my personal opinion on that part. But from what I've seen so far, let's just regroup here for a second. Just want to address the fact, because I saw Daryl just came on, and I deleted that post last night right when he was watching it. So this limb pocket is much shorter than Hoyt has used for the last several years, and it's getting back towards more of the, and I will show this picture again because whenever I have this discussion about limb pockets, I just hold that up, preferably in focus. I just hold that up. And anybody who was around shooting that kind of stuff knows that was the best limb pocket around. So to see Hoyt start shortening this up a little bit, I like it. Obviously with the length of this riser, that probably played a role in it, because this limb is 12 inches long and the pocket is 3 1/8, which gives us 8.875 of effective limb. The exact same as the Stratos, except for the bend rate on these limbs are much different than the Stratos as well. So as we go to look at the cam itself, that foot on there, that foot right there is pretty smart. Not only can you adjust let off, you can also swap them from top to bottom to adjust your wall, how hard you want your wall to be. That's pretty damn smart. I won't lie. Whoever thought of that, they deserve a gold star. That's pretty slick. That's pretty tight. And so, obviously, as far as the rest of the module goes, I probably don't need to explain how a module works on one of these cams, because if you came to my page and you think that's what I'm going to explain to you, then not going to happen. But the shoe is great. 65, 70, 75% let off. And then, like I said, you take the top foot, go to the bottom foot, go to the top if you want to manipulate the style of wall you have. Of course, Hoyt still has the interchangeable grips. All of the measurements that I took for the axle to grip, etc., and for the reflex of these were just with the grip that came on it. I didn't change any of that because all of that is just a reference anyway. So I will be putting on my mods for this week, probably tomorrow. I'll put on the new laces from Gas. I'll get them ready to go. Oh, one other thing. The string stop. When string stops started coming out on target bows, a lot of us just took them bitches straight off. Probably because we were just stuck in our old ways and we just didn't want to have to deal with it. Since, the last, 6-8 years, kind of learned that, well, number one, you never want to set it to where it's hitting the string stop at rest. The reason for that is simple. If you're out shooting when it's warm, any string material, any limb material, if you get into extremely hot weather, the strings are going to relax a little bit, the limbs are going to relax a little bit, and basically it's going to force this down into your string stop even harder. So what I like to do is I just basically put about a credit card width between the string and the stop at rest. And then any incremental changes that I go through during the day on a hot day, it doesn't affect when this is impacting the string stop. One note, at the end of the day when you go back to the hotel or the temperature cools down, all that shit goes back to where it was. So that's why, like back in the day when we'd be shooting in Yankton and PA and it's freaking 110 with the heat index and we're all adding 1.5 yards. And then then you go back at the next morning at the practice range, and not everybody, but a lot of people are hitting high because they're still on their hotter than the doorknob to hell adjustment from yesterday. But with everything cooled down, everything went back to where it was. So for those of you, just to kind of recap here real quick, for those of you that liked the Invicta, I liked the Invicta. I just shot it last year, bought it used. I did have a Stratos. I didn't vibe with the Stratos as much as the Invicta, but for those of you that thought the Invicta was your jam, this is definitely going to be your jammy jam, because even though the riser's longer, it's the exact same geometry this way, pretty much the exact same reflex. It does have the cable slide, and it does have Hoyt's new cam. I'm going to be very curious to see what basically happens as we start to get through the tuning curve, I'll call it, of this particular cam. Because whether it was the GTX or the spiral cam or any of those, if you looked at Jesse Broadwater's spiral cams from way back in the day, of course this doesn't apply because it's so close. Well, here, hold on, I got one right here. If you looked at Jesse's or Shane's or any of those guys that used to be, that were freaking just crushing with these, this distance right here from this lobe to the string, this is a little bit more than I would generally run. But back in the day, bro, Jesse and Shane and these guys would have that lobe like right there. Like absolutely just, and I'll tell you what it did, is it made the draw really smooth. It made the back end smooth. It absolutely made the cams very, very shootable. We'd run the top cam a little bit ahead. Not trying to compare myself to Shane and Jesse and those guys, but they were on another level. But I'm going to be curious to see what some of the folks out there come up with when it comes to the actual tunability of this cam. And by tunability, I don't mean paper tears, bare shaft tunes, etc., etc. Do you think sighting the target will in with a loose string stop and then... Mark, certainly can, yes, because depending on how far off it is, it basically can affect when the arrow actually when the knock comes off the string. So yes, it certainly can. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about amongst all of these geometries is Hoyt is of the opinion that where they have their arrow traveling, basically the burger button, just as a reference, that where they have it traveling through with their knock travel geometry of their cams, that's where they think it's best. If you look at a Matthews has always thought that perfectly straight knock travel straight down the middle is the best. I'm not here to say which one's better than the other, but each company kind of has their own methodology, and that's what kind of leads to some of these shifts in geometry that you see. The Stratos was a huge shift in geometry, and just seems to me, from observing from the outside, and I've not had any of these conversations. Yeah, Dean, I mean, that's my point, is that's what all this is about, is learning why maybe one of those bows was better for you. But, understanding that Hoyt has had a tremendous amount of success over the years, especially, period. And so to see them try the pro comp, lower the grip, realize that wasn't necessarily the global jam. I ended up shooting it very, very well. I shot the podium well. They moved the grip back up a little bit. And so, I got to give Hoyt credit on this particular bow because they took the stuff they learned from the Stratos and the Invicta and everything else. And like I said, they pretty much just boiled it down and skimmed the cream off the top. I'm liking what I'm seeing with this particular cam. But like I said, I'm curious to see what happens with the tunability of it. And by tunability of it, I mean, some folks are going to roll the cams back a little bit like this. They're going to long string it or short string it. Or that's the great thing about archery. You give these bows to nerds like myself, or guys that just like to tinker around and play. And look, some people just set these things up and just pound the middle all day, and that's super cool. But other folks like to play around with long stringing and short stringing and doing other things just to see what it'll do. I'm about that. And so I'm going to be curious to see what sort of, usability and versatility this cam system has. And look, not to say anything bad about it, some of the other cams of this 5-piece ilk don't necessarily respond well to being over or under rotated. Way back in the day with the Apex, I had a 31 and a half inch cam and a 32 inch cam on two different bows, and I would under rotate the 32 and over rotate the 31 and a half just to see which one I thought shot better. For me, it was always the long strung 31 and a half. Just kind of where I've always been. When you look at the spiral cams with Jesse and Shane and those guys running that lobe closer to the string, they were basically long stringing it. I mean, that's the long and short of it. And so, pretty impressed with this so far. I'll be setting it up and giving it a go. I don't know, as far as stabilization goes, I'm a puss when it comes to that anyway. So I usually only run like 4 ounces or so out front on like a 33, and then 15, 16 on a 15 heading towards the back. I've just never been able to get down with all the mass weight. I just can't do it. It's not a strength thing, I promise. It's not a strength thing. I will put money on that. I think that bow will improve my X count. I'm a 30X. It takes me 50. Chester got jokes today, son. But anyway, that was basically the live feed that I wanted to do last night to kind of get this information out there. Redoing it tonight because the response to last night's one was way more than I was expecting for not having did a live feed like this for years and years. So I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. Archery is definitely a special community, and the sharing of information is something that makes all of us better. I didn't start off knowing anything. Tom and Thomas Neely and Bob Gentry and Alan Ruddick and Maurice Audet and Cave Johnson from Spot Hog, and I was blessed to be up in Southern Oregon, and I had some absolute amazing people around me that taught me all of this stuff. And so, and I just kind of took it from there and never stopped because I'm an inquisitive nerd. But anyway, that's the long and short of it. I will be doing more live feeds and more tuning videos as I work through the process of getting this thing set up. I might do a video when I get this system tore apart down here so I can see exactly what's going on with the 1/4 inch axle and all of that. But, speaking of axles, I wanted to talk about something real quick before I go. And that is limb cavitation. And so limb cavitation is when the axle is flexing, not bending, just flexing. And so what ends up happening is if these are your limb tips, when the axle flexes, the limbs kind of cavitate in on each other like this, and then after the shot they come back up. But that's limb cavitation. You can take those axles out, roll them on a table, and they're perfectly straight most of the time. I don't think that limb cavitation is the boogeyman by any stretch of the imagination. I've been dealing with that since the original PSE Dominator way back in the Dave Chronogold days. And so what did it do? It did change my tune. It did change my tune. Wow. It changed my tune. I retuned to it, and I didn't really have any problems moving forward after that. However, I did end up getting a hardened axle put in, and it got rid of that, and then I had to tune back to that. So I don't think that limb cavitation is like this big giant boogeyman that everyone thinks it's the end-all be-all, and you just tune to it because it doesn't change. The limbs don't break, or excuse me, the axles aren't breaking. They're not actually bending, they're just flexing. Now, with these wider platforms that we're seeing now with the wider limbs and the wider pockets and all that, going up to a quarter-inch axle is it's just a must. You have to do it. The load is more, everything's wider, so the axle has to be longer. So going to the quarter-inch axle is just an absolute must. There's just no other way around it. One of the things that I'll be doing with this bow and some of the other bows is I will be doing a laser test to show the bow's torsional stability at full draw. That is not something that I do by hand because people cheat. I mean, I don't cheat, but somebody might see that test and be like, oh, Greg's cheating. So I'll do it in the hooter shooter. But basically what I'm going to do is I will put a laser in an arrow, and I'll put a laser on a stabilizer. I'll bring it to full draw in the hooter shooter. I'll straighten the lasers out so they're the same. And then I will apply a predetermined amount of side load to the stabilizer, basically twisting the bow so you can see just how rigid that bow is and how much deviation you get in those lasers. I did this on previous bows that I was shooting not here long ago, and they are, there's a lot of that lateral movement in there. If you want to test this when you get off this live feed, just bring your bow to full draw and then just move your front hand and see how tight the system feels. Obviously, if you're running super high let off on a hunting bow, probably not a good idea. I'm talking about hunting bows specifically. The Hoyt hunting bow back there did do very well also. But so that's going to be it for tonight, folks. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I promise I won't delete this one, and there will be more of this stuff coming. So I appreciate you guys, and I just seeing all the reviews and all the things that I see on TikTok and Instagrams and Facebooks, I just was like, Jesus, man, these folks need to put out some better information than feels good, shoots 312, draws nice. I care about that kind of a review as much as I care about bow color. That would be none. So anyway, that's going to be it for tonight, folks. I appreciate you guys. Love you guys as always. If you ever have any questions or whatever, let me know. And we're just going to keep on doing the thing. But I will be doing more of these, I promise. Appreciate you guys. Love, peace, and chicken grease.